From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Sports Line.
Hey there, Titans Talk on your television. Steve Layman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Monday night. Kind of a bummer of a Monday around Nashville after the Titans' performance yesterday in East Rutherford, New Jersey against the previously winless Jets. A 27-24 overtime final in favor of New York, dropping Tennessee to 2-2 on the season. Second straight road game that goes to overtime. This one very different, though. The game up in Seattle, the Titans had to battle back. They were the gutsy team in the second half. They get it to overtime. They find a way to win. That felt like a game that was a game of a really good team. You'd lost week 1 at home. You didn't want to start 0-2. You don't play your best, but you find a way in the second half to change the course of the game. Come back, get yourself into overtime, and then you make plays to win it there and get a big, big road win. I think that was very encouraging. What we saw in week 3 against the Colts team that has never been an easy win for the Titans was very encouraging. And I know they were shorthanded yesterday against the Jets. I get it. I understand exactly who was not in the lineup. But if you're a good team, you got to go win that game. The way the game started, you've got to put that game away. Those are just the things that you have to do if you're going to take this to the next level. And I'm not sitting here saying that the sky is falling or that the Titans are bad or anything like that. This is a good team that, when healthy, is going to probably win the AFC South. They should win the AFC South. They're going to be in the playoffs. If not, they've got a whole bunch of other questions they have to answer. That's what's likely to happen with this team. But the disappointing thing, I think, yesterday, if you're a Titans fan and you've watched this team for a while, is it felt like it was a replay. It felt like a game that we have seen multiple times over the past several years watching this franchise. The Titans for several years now have been a good team. They have not been great. And this was the season where all the hype was about adding Julio Jones, fixing things on defense. And this was the team that was supposed to follow up the last 2 years of getting to the AFC Championship game with that great playoff run of a couple of years ago. And last year winning the AFC South for the first time since 2008. This team was supposed to follow up all of that and kind of combine it all together. It was supposed to run through the AFC South. It was supposed to then be a real contender in the playoffs. That's what this team was supposed to be. And yesterday looked like the same old, same old. And again, same old isn't necessarily bad. The Titans are one of very few teams in the league that can say that they've had winning seasons in 5 consecutive years. They've established a winning culture that not many teams in the NFL have. But during that time, they have been good, not great. Heck, a couple years ago, they made that their entire motto. Go from good to great. And it hasn't happened yet. And again, this was the team that was supposed to do that. And yesterday, it certainly wasn't that. And again, they got to get healthy. I understand that they didn't have A.J. Brown and they didn't have Julio Jones yesterday. I understand that Ben Jones, Taylor Lewan, and Roger Saffold all suffered injuries in the game yesterday on the offensive line. I understand that Anthony Ferkser's probably not back at 100% playing at tight end yesterday. And I get that Bud Dupree wasn't there on defense. I understand the challenges of not having a Pro Bowl punter like Brett Kern, who does so much for this team in terms of field position out there. We saw that yesterday with a 12-yard punt early in the game and then a well-returned punt in the fourth quarter that set up the go-ahead score for the Jets. I understand all of those things, and with a little bit more health or maybe even a little bit more luck on the Titans side, that should take care of itself. And you should be good to go for the rest of the season. You should be in better shape for that, to play more like you're accustomed to doing. But this is the NFL. It is football. Injuries are a part of what happens. And you've got to be able to absorb that. Last year, the Titans lost Taylor Lewan at left tackle for almost the entire season. They still found a way to have a 2,000-yard rusher and average 30 points a game offensively and win the AFC South. They've had other injuries that they've had to deal with and absorb, and you got to prove that you find ways to win games. And yesterday was a game against a young, inexperienced Jets team that had been 0-3, had scored just 20 points all season, and was shut out the previous week. Yesterday was a day for other guys to step up. Yesterday was a day for the team to come together and win. Not necessarily on the back of one guy, but just come together and have a culture win, so to speak. They talk so much about their culture and the winning attitude at St. Thomas Sports Park. And it's there. It is there. I will give them credit for that because we've seen all the wins of the last few seasons. But unfortunately, we've also seen these mysterious losses. Last year was worse in Cincinnati when they went up there and played a Cincinnati team that was terrible and lost because they didn't have the injury excuses in that game. They just laid an egg. But that can't happen. You can't lose to the Bengals of last year. You can't lose to the Jets of this season if you truly want to be considered one of the contenders in the AFC or a team that could potentially get to a Super Bowl. And that, make no mistake, was the expectation for this Titans team coming into the year. It was that they were going to contend in the AFC. They were going to battle with the Chiefs or the Ravens or the Bills. They were going to be right there in that conversation. And from what we've seen for 4 games, is not that. There's a long ways to go. They've got 13 games to corral all this and to fix it and to be better and to run off a bunch of wins. And maybe they'll be in that discussion at the end. And as we saw a couple years ago, even if you're not, if you get into the playoffs and you're playing your best ball, you have a chance to make a run in that situation. And I think the Titans are going to be in that situation. The question is, can they get out of this early season funk and put it together in the way we expected coming into the season? Because so far they have not. And yesterday there were a bunch of chances, again, that a really good team puts a team like the Jets away. The Titans had good drives or good field position in their first 3 possessions of the game. Got into the red zone. But instead of 6, they settled for 3. And a lead that could have been 13, 14, 17, or even 21-0, which would have effectively buried the Jets. You're not an 0-3 team with all the question marks that they have and get down 17 or 21-0 and battling back. You're just not. And so the Titans had an opportunity yesterday, even with everything working against them health-wise, to jump on the Jets early and sort of stomp them out in any chance or hope that they had. Instead, they left the door open. You settle for those field goals instead of touchdowns, and it's just a 9-0 lead. And then, defensively, while there were moments yesterday they were good. They forced a bunch of 3-and-outs. They got a turnover. They did some solid things defensively, but the issue of the X plays or the big plays creeped back into the equation. And when it was just 9-0, you give up a couple big plays. There's a missed tackle. There's a penalty. The Jets ultimately go down the field and score a touchdown. And now all of a sudden it's a 9-7 game. And that's what it was at halftime. And so this game in which the Titans seemingly sort of dominated the course of play in the first half, but made some critical mistakes and couldn't finish in the red zone, now all of a sudden it's a ball game at the half. And that Jets team has belief that, okay, we can do this. We're in this game. We just need to make a play or get a drive. And they went out and they took the lead in the third quarter. Even then, the Titans regained the lead in the fourth quarter. They got back to their identity, and Derrick Henry drives right down the field. 50 of the 75 yards on that drive were Derrick Henry. He punches it in, gives them the lead. They get the 2-point conversion. They're up 7. That's the place again where if you are an elite team, your defense shuts the door at that point. Go out there, get off the field, get the ball back to your offense, and put this game away. And instead, the Titans again, penalty, missed tackle, big play, busted play on a booted snap that Zach Wilson's able to pick up and complete to Keelan Cole for 29 yards. That can't happen. Ultimately, the Jets score. We've got a tie game again. And then you've got a bad punt. Great field position for the Jets. They take a shot, and former Titan Corey Davis makes the catch. Credit to the Titans. They didn't give up. They fought back. They score late and get it into overtime. But you don't want to be in that position. And the Jets are able to drive the field. Third downs, again, a bugaboo. Zach Wilson completing 2 third downs in that overtime possession. Ultimately, the Jets get a field goal. Titans still have a shot because they held near the goal line, but they can't go down the field and have the magic from Seattle this time. They couldn't go all run because of the time on the clock with Henry. They had a shot down the seam with Anthony Ferkser. He couldn't hold on. That might have won the game right there. They had a delay of game that pushed them back further, made it a 49-yard field goal. Tough penetration on the third down play as well. Tannehill just did his best to get rid of it and avoid a sack that would have been really disastrous there. And then ultimately Randy Bullock, who was the hero 2 weeks ago against the Seahawks, can't connect from 49 yards. Kick was nowhere close, short and wide left. And it's over. And the Titans suffer what is a really, really disappointing defeat. And there's no excuses. It goes to everybody, and Mike Vrabel said that today. It starts with him, it starts with the coaching staff, and ultimately it's just about execution. No matter who plays in the game, no matter who is available, you have to find a way to go out there and play at your best with who you have and win a game like that. This wasn't the 72 Dolphins. This was the Jets at 0-3. And a coach that had never won a game as a head coach in the NFL, and a rookie quarterback who had never won a game in the NFL before. That's what the Titans were facing yesterday. And they had a shot to win the game on multiple occasions, and they didn't, and they let the Jets hang around, and ultimately they lost. And because of that, they sit here at 2-2. And instead of having kind of the stranglehold of the division already and feeling good about themselves before another game that they should win this weekend in Jacksonville, and then you get into some of those marquee matchups in the AFC, instead you're sitting there at 2-2, and there's a lot of questions here tonight as we begin this show. And our phone lines are open, 737-7767. Your thoughts about the game yesterday, what you saw as you watched it unfold, what the Titans messed up with there, and what they dealt with in overtime to have that type of a struggle. We want to hear from you tonight. We will get to your phone calls right now, as a matter of fact. 737-7767 is the number. And let's go to a caller here. I believe this is Ron. Ron, do I have that correct? You're up here on Titans Talk.
You're right. You're correct.
Awesome. Go ahead. You were on the air.
All right. My question is about our offensive line. It seems like they're killing Tannehill with so many quarterback snaps. We've got Taylor Lewan that's making $1 million a game, supposedly an all-pro. And is his tank empty, or is it coaching?
Well, I think specifically with Lewan, Ron, you're talking about a guy who tore his ACL less than a year ago. And while improvements to ACL recovery have been great in the last several years, that's still a difficult injury to come back from. And you're talking about a guy coming back from it who weighs 300-some pounds and has to be very, very stable on that leg. I'm just not sure it's there yet. I still think Taylor Lewan is a very good player in this league, and the Titans need him to be such as this season moves along. And so I think your hope is the more game reps he gets out there, the better and more comfortable he feels, and you start to see him get back closer to that guy that was a 3-time Pro Bowler on the left side before that injury. The offensive line as a whole, though, it's a real concern right now. They gave up 7 sacks yesterday, and the Jets' front is good. They are. But 7 sacks cannot happen. That is the highest total allowed by any team in the NFL this year. And 17 sacks now for the season for Ryan Tannehill. All last year, he was sacked 25 times. He's been sacked 17 times in 4 weeks. That cannot happen. They had issues yesterday on the right side with David Quessenberry, who gave up 3 sacks himself. Nate Davis had some issues. Ben Jones is battling through injuries. He had a couple issues yesterday. Roger Saffold got hurt and left the game yesterday. The health up front is a problem, but more than anything, this unit, whatever it's been, just has not gelled together in the way that you would expect them to gel. They're supposed to be a strength, and to this point, they have not been that, at least in pass protection. And you're right. At some point, you're going to get your quarterback killed if he's on his backside as many times as he was yesterday. You got anything else, Ron?
No, that's it.
Okay.
That's my comments.
Well, it is a good comment, and probably the biggest concern for the Titans right now is protection up front. Because, look, another thing we talked about with this team this year was the offense should be better. You had Julio Jones. Offense averaged 30 points a game last year. They should be at least that good, if not better, offensively. And then you hope the defense makes some improvement from where they were last year. And I think the defense probably has made some improvement. But you're still relying on this offense to do the heavy lifting for this team. That's how they're constructed. It's supposed to be an offense that scores a bunch of points and a defense that complements that. This offense has not lived up to the billing so far. And it's not Derrick Henry and the running game. That has been sensational, and he had 157 yards rushing and a touchdown again yesterday. He's by far the leading rusher again in the NFL this season and on pace to have another 2,000-yard year. He's been as advertised. But the offensive line's been brutal in pass protection. Ryan Tannehill has not been nearly as efficient as he's been in the last couple of seasons. And the passing game just hasn't gotten going. You've had Ferguson out. You've had Julio Jones out. You've had A.J. Brown out. Other guys have stepped up and made some plays here and there, but you're not going to be the same offense without those guys. And they've got to get them back. It's as simple as that in that regard. But the offense in total has to be better. They cannot be at 20 and 23 and 24 points a game. They need to be at 30. Because that's where they were last year. That's where they have to be to play at an efficient and elite level in this league week in and week out. Back to the phones. Say hello to Nate. Nate, good evening and welcome to Titans Talk.
Yeah, how's it going, Steve?
Good.
Yeah, I'm really not too worried about yesterday. I think it was an entertaining game, and I'm a Titan fan through and through, but you had to be happy for Corey Davis, man. He was a person that I got a chance to meet when he was playing with the Titans. Very humble, quiet, smoking guy, man, and I was happy for him, even though the Titans lost. But, man, a couple of things that really stood out to me yesterday is that, first of all, it's not no NFL team that's going to win without their top 2 receivers playing. And why is Derrick Henry running routes, man? I mean, people talk about they're using him too much in the run game, but I think it's them running routes that take more energy out of them than anything. And why isn't Michael Pruitt on the field more? And if anything, it was the defensive backfield that lost that game, man. They had that little rookie looking like the second coming of Roger Starbuck or something, man. It was ridiculous, some of the throws he made. And I want to get your take on all that. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, I saw a couple jokes yesterday, Nate, and we appreciate your call about, do the Titans think Joe Namath is back on Broadway with the Jets in this game? Because too many of those were broken plays. I mentioned the fumbled snap that turned into a 29-yard pass downfield. That type of stuff just cannot happen. And the Titans let it happen yesterday. You had the big pass interference penalty on Dane Cruikshank in the fourth quarter. You had another pass interference early on, or a defensive holding early on that led to stuff. You had another broken play where you get behind the defense and it's a 50-yard gain down the sideline. You have the 53-yard touchdown to Corey Davis. It's those X plays, whether they're actually converted plays by the Jets or penalties that extend drives or propel drives. You got to eliminate that. And the Titans couldn't do it yesterday against an offense that, frankly, isn't very good. And that is definitely concerning about the secondary and about this defense. They weren't able to get home. Wilson had been sacked 15 times coming in. That was more than any other team in the league. He only got sacked once yesterday by Harold Landry. Landry has been good at getting pressure. There has not been enough of anybody else in that regard. So, yeah, that's absolutely a concern. And I'm with you. Corey Davis, it was great to see it yesterday. You don't want to see it happen against the Titans. But Corey Davis just came to work every day during his time in Tennessee. He had some injury issues. He never quite lived up to the billing as the 5th overall selection in the draft. And ultimately, he was gone after 4 seasons. But he seems to have found a home in this offense in New York. He's healthy right now, and he's performing. And yesterday, for him to have 4 catches, 111 yards, and that huge touchdown catch, you had to be happy for him. And it shouldn't be lost on Titans fans that it happened on the day that A.J. Brown wasn't there and Julio Jones wasn't there. A.J. Brown was the guy that had been reliable enough and good enough that the Titans were willing to say, we can't afford to pay Corey, and we're not going to pay him, and we're going to move on. Because we believe in A.J. Brown is the quintessential #1 wide receiver in the league. And so they let Corey walk. And then they go out and they make the trade for Julio Jones. So that's your dynamic addition to the offense. That's the guy that's not only supposed to replace Davis, but be the reason you're better offensively and better in the passing game than what you were. And then he's not available either. So both of the guys that are how the Titans are moving on from Corey Davis weren't even in the stadium yesterday. And meanwhile, Davis goes off for the Jets and nearly won the game for them by himself in some way. So happy for Corey because he's a good guy and you want to see him have success in a new stop. But a somewhat ironic and very disappointing afternoon for the Titans in the way it all unfolded. Back to the phone, say hello to Don. Don, good evening and welcome on the program here on Titans Talk.
Hey, Steve. I mean, you got a great show, man.
Thank you.
I'm a big Titans fan and everything. I just want to offer, comment and everything. A lot of successful teams that go to the Super Bowl and everything, man. Dude, they have somebody that's blocking for the quarterback. And the LeVon Taylor guy, man, his whole job is to block for the quarterback. If you look at Brady and all of his offensive line, you got people that, that are protecting him. So he can get those passes out and everything. Back in the days when I played, back in the late 80s, early 90s, was my end of my career. We call guys like the line guy, we call him he's a dud. He's a bullet that don't fire. And for the price that the Titans are paying him to block for Tannehill, we can get about 3 or 4 guys for the price that they're paying him, to go in there and they'll do a good job. They'll block for him. Tannehill can get his passes off. The team can be successful, but if you ain't got nobody blocking for the quarterback, man, you can forget about trying to go to any kind of Super Bowl or any kind of playoff. And I'm just trying to get out there that this guy, we got a good team. It makes no difference if Julio Jones is out and all that stuff there. We got a good quarterback. But if the quarterback is not protected, man, we're not going to be successful.
Yeah.
And that's about all I got to say, man.
All right, Don, thank you. There's no question about it. That is a quintessential truth about the NFL. You have to protect your quarterback. You have to be able to throw it consistently and effectively. And the Titans have not protected Tannehill so far this season, and maybe it's directly because of that, but he hasn't been nearly as efficient as he was the last couple of seasons. And obviously you haven't had all the weapons out there in terms of pass catchers. I assume that will help when it happens, but we haven't seen it yet. And that is a huge concern. It has to change. I will say this, though. To me, it's an overall problem of the offensive line, and it's not a one-guy problem. And I think it's because he's so outspoken, and he has been in his career. And he's had some run-ins, and he's had some bad moments that I think stick with people. You don't always even know your offensive lineman if you're a casual fan. But you know Taylor Lewan if you're a Titans fan, casual or not. because he's so outspoken. He's in the media. He has his own podcast. He likes to run his mouth. People look at that, and it rubs them the wrong way a lot of the time. And I think people, to some degree, haven't even forgiven him for the way he came into the league. Now, he's a 3-time Pro Bowler since then. You can basically be assured he's the most accomplished offensive lineman on the team, and those aren't fake accomplishments. That's voted on by his peers. That's perceived by general managers and other coaches around the league. That's why he got paid what he got paid, because he was one of the best offensive linemen in football. He was an absolute difference maker. And he was that going into last season, and then the ACL injury happened. And that's the thing that I think you just have to wait for here. And maybe he'll never come back from it. I guess you have to leave that possibility on the table. But for right now, you're a month into the season of him coming back. He's not even a year past the injury. You're talking about a big guy in the offensive line. I think you have to give him a little more time before you're ready to call him a dud. Because Taylor Lewan's career is not that of a dud. His career is that of a really good offensive lineman that's a 3-time Pro Bowler. There aren't many people who can say that in the history of the league at left tackle. That's the makings of a really, really, really good career. And he was on pace to do it again last year, and probably for several years to come until the injury. And so if you're the Titans, you just have to hope that a little bit more time, he regains the trust and the confidence in that, and that he gets back to playing the way he did before. The entire offensive line's got to figure it out, though, because it's not just on Lewan. Lewan had a bad penalty yesterday. He's got to solve that. That feels more like a problem he had earlier in his career. He's got to get rid of that again. And he gave up 1 sack. You don't want that to happen from your high-priced left tackle, but it's going to happen eventually in the league. What can't happen is as an offensive line, you give up 7. Every once in a while, you get beat on a play. It just happens. The game is full of one-on-one matchups, and sometimes you lose them. You want to win more than you lose, but sometimes you're going to lose one. What can happen is your offensive line can't get beat 7 times in a game and 17 times in 4 weeks, because your quarterback isn't going to last if that is the case. And that's what the Titans are dealing with now. And of all the injuries they have, the one good thing at the moment is that Ryan Tannehill keeps standing up after each play. Because as I said last week after the win against the Colts, he is the guy. You know, when they didn't have Julio Jones, they didn't have A.J. Brown in that game, and it was the cast of characters that he was out there throwing to. He still managed the game, along with Derrick Henry, enough for the Titans to win that game. He is the one guy, Henry too. Those are the 2 guys. Those are the 2 guys that the Titans can ill afford to lose. And with that being said, you can't have them get hit that many times. You just can't. Fit one more in here and go to Eric. Eric, good evening. Welcome to Titans Talk.
Hello?
Yeah, Eric, you're on the air. Go ahead. Hey, Eric, are you there? All right. Let's see. Maybe we'll put him on hold, see if we can maybe get him back. We will take a break. 737-7767, the phone number. Titans Talk continues here on News Channel 5 Plus after this.